Shoeless Joe Jackson, the third highest career batting average in the history of Major League Baseball. Babe Ruth copied his swing. Ty Cobb called him the finest natural hitter who ever lived. And yet his name does not appear on any plaque in Cooperstown. No Hall of Fame, no official recognition. For over 100 years, his legacy was defined not by what he achieved on the field, but by a single scandal. To understand how that happened, you have to go back to the very beginning, to a cotton mill in South Carolina, where a 6-year-old boy was already learning that the world had very different plans for him. Shoeless Joe Jackson was born on July 16, 1887, in Pickens County, South Carolina. His father was a mill worker, earning $1.25 a day. When Joe was 6 years old, he went to work sweeping cotton dust off the wooden floors of a textile mill 12 hours a day alongside his brothers and sisters. He never learned to read. He never learned to write. And in a country rapidly modernizing around him, that invisible wall would follow Joe Jackson everywhere he went for the rest of his life. But the mill gave him one thing no classroom could. It gave him the company baseball team. Joe started as a pitcher. He was so strong that his fastball once broke the arm of the player trying to catch him. After that, nobody wanted to stand behind the plate when Joe threw. The coach moved him to the outfield. That decision was made out of necessity, almost by accident, and it changed the course of baseball history. June 6, 1908, Greenville, South Carolina. Joe had a problem. His new baseball cleats were tearing his feet apart. The blisters were so severe that he asked his coach to sit out. The coach refused because Joe was the best player on the field. So Joe took his shoes off. He played in his stocking feet, mid-inning, on a professional baseball diamond. Nobody in the stands noticed until Joe stepped up and drove the ball hard enough to round third base. As he crossed home plate, a fan of the opposing team saw the White Sox and shouted something deeply unkind. A reporter named Carter Latimer cleaned up the insult and published the nickname Shoeless Joe the next morning. That nickname never left. What most people do not know is that Joe hated that nickname with a quiet, persistent fury. He later said, "I have read and heard every kind of yarn imaginable on how I got that name. I never played the outfield barefoot, and that was the only day I ever played in my stockinged feet, but it stuck with me." It made him sound like a backwoods fool. He was not that. The illiteracy cut deeper. When he first joined the Philadelphia Athletics, his teammates took him to a fine restaurant and told him it was customary to drink from the finger bowl between courses. He drank from it. Humiliated when he understood the joke, he packed his bag that night and boarded a train back to South Carolina. On July 19, 1908, Katie Wynn married Joe when she was 15 years old. She could read. She could write. She read his contracts aloud to him, managed his finances, and wrote his letters. When fans sent mail asking for his autograph, she signed his name on the response because Joe was too ashamed to do it himself. The most valuable signed sports photograph ever sold at auction was a photo of Joe Jackson. It fetched $1,470,000 in 2021. Most of those signatures were actually hers. In 1911, during his first full season in Major League Baseball, Joe Jackson batted .408. That means that out of every 10 times he stepped to the plate, he produced a hit more than 4 times as a rookie. With no formal coaching in his life, that record still stands today. No rookie in the history of the sport has ever hit for a higher average in a full season. Over 100 years later, the record belongs to an illiterate mill worker from South Carolina. And he still lost the batting title that year because Ty Cobb batted .420. Think about what that means. Jackson posted averages of .387, .408, and .395 across 3 consecutive seasons and did not win a single batting title because Cobb was always just above him, like a ceiling that moved every time Joe got close. Then came June of 1912. In a single month, Jackson batted .529, the highest monthly average recorded by any player since 1901. A number so extreme it still sits alone in the record books. The praise from his peers was extraordinary. Walter Johnson, arguably the greatest pitcher of that era, said flatly that Jackson was the greatest natural ball player I have ever seen. That is a verdict, not a compliment. And then there is Babe Ruth. Ruth did not merely admire Jackson. He studied him. He imitated his stance, feet together, weight loaded, that distinctive power stride into the pitch. Ruth later said, "I copied Jackson's style because I thought he was the greatest hitter I had ever seen, the greatest natural hitter I ever saw. He is the one who made me a hitter." The man widely considered the greatest baseball player who ever lived built his swing by watching Shoeless Joe Jackson. Jackson batted .340 or higher in 8 of his 13 seasons. His career average of .356 sits third on the all-time list behind only Ty Cobb and Rogers Hornsby. He never won a batting title, not once. But the man who learned from him won 7 home run titles and became immortal. Now we arrive at the part that changed everything. The 1919 Chicago White Sox were considered the best team in baseball. Jackson was their star. Going into that World Series against the Cincinnati Reds, almost nobody gave Cincinnati a real chance. But something was already wrong before the first pitch was thrown. A first baseman named Chick Gandil had been approached by gamblers. The arrangement was direct and ugly. Lose the World Series, collect money. Gandil brought in 7 teammates. Joe Jackson was one of them. He was promised $20,000. He received $5,000 handed to him in a hotel room, in a plain envelope. What Jackson did next has been debated ever since. He went to Charles Comiskey, the owner of the White Sox, and tried to tell him what was happening. Comiskey refused to see him. The door was closed. Jackson was left standing in a hallway with $5,000 he had already accepted, and a conscience that apparently was not quiet enough to let him simply walk away. So he played. In that World Series, the one he was allegedly paid to lose, Jackson batted .375, the highest average on either team. He drove in 6 runs. He hit the only home run of the entire series for either side. He threw out 5 Cincinnati base runners from the outfield. He committed 0 errors across 8 games. His 12 hits set a World Series record that stood for nearly 50 years. If he was trying to lose, he was doing a remarkably poor job of it. But the evidence on the other side is harder to dismiss. He accepted the money. He admitted it under oath before a grand jury in September of 1920, after his teammate Eddie Chicot confessed and named the others. A bank in Savannah later confirmed a deposit made by Katie Jackson in December of 1919, 2 months after the series ended. The question that has hung in the air for over a century is simple. Can a man accept money to affect the outcome of a game and then go out and produce the best individual performance of that series? Was Jackson naive, conflicted, or a man who took money he should not have, but could not bring himself to actually play dishonestly when he stepped between the lines? I am not going to answer that for you. Was Jackson guilty, or was he a man who got caught in something too large for him to navigate alone? Leave your answer in the comments. August 2nd, 1921, a Chicago courtroom. The jury deliberated. They reviewed what remained of the evidence, because by the time the criminal trial began, something remarkable had happened. The original grand jury confessions, the sworn statements Jackson and 2 teammates had given the previous year, had vanished from the official court files. Nobody was ever charged with taking them. Without the confessions, the prosecution had little left. On August 2nd, the jury acquitted all 8 players. The crowd in the courtroom reportedly cheered. Then came August 3rd. 1 day later, the newly appointed commissioner of baseball, Judge Kennesaw Mountain Landis, issued a statement. Despite the acquittal, despite the jury's verdict, despite the court of law having just found these men not guilty, Landis banned all 8 players from professional baseball for life. No appeals, no exceptions, no timeline. Jackson protested his innocence for the rest of his life. He later said, "Regardless of what anybody says, I was innocent of any wrongdoing. I gave baseball all I had. If I had been making errors and looking foolish at the plate against the Reds, there might have been some grounds for suspicion." And then there is the legend that refuses to die. A young boy standing outside the courthouse, grabbing Jackson's sleeve as he walked out, looking up and saying, "Say it ain't so, Joe." It is one of the most famous lines in American sports history. It captures perfectly the feeling of a nation betrayed. But baseball historians have spent decades searching for any evidence this exchange actually occurred. They found none. No newspaper account places a child outside that courthouse. No witness ever came forward. Jackson himself denied it ever happened. The myth became more powerful than the man. He packed up, went home to Greenville, opened a dry cleaning business with Katie. The man who had been purchased for $65,000, a record price for a baseball player, spent the next decade pressing other people's shirts. After leaving professional baseball in 1921, Jackson did not disappear. He kept playing. Semi-professional leagues across Georgia and South Carolina. Small towns, small crowds, no salary worth mentioning. But the same swing, the same Black Betsy, the same man who had once been purchased for $65,000, now playing for the love of a game that had formally decided it no longer wanted him. In 1922, he and Katie moved to Savannah, Georgia, and opened a dry cleaning business. It grew into multiple locations, a real income even through the Great Depression. Not the story of a broken man, the story of a resilient one. In 1932, they returned to Greenville and later ran a liquor store on Pendleton Street, just around the corner from Brandon Mill, where Joe had swept cotton dust off the floor as a 6-year-old boy. He ended up, in the end, not far from where he had started. And then came 1941. Joe Jackson was past 50 years old. His playing days were supposed to be a memory. But a semi-professional team invited him to appear in a night game, the first game ever played under artificial lights that Jackson had been part of. He had never seen a baseball field lit up that way before. He stepped in, he swung, he hit 2 home runs. The fire never left. The campaign to restore his name never stopped either. Ted Williams, the man widely regarded as the greatest scientific hitter who ever lived, the last player to bat over 400 in a full season, had a career average of .344. He was 12 batting average points behind Jackson for his entire career. Williams fought publicly and repeatedly for Joe's reinstatement into baseball. He argued that Jackson belonged in Cooperstown. Decades passed. It did not work. Then came the films. In 1988, 8 Men Out brought the scandal to a new generation with the weight of tragedy rather than a cautionary tale. A year later, Field of Dreams made Joe Jackson a ghost, literally, and in doing so gave him a kind of immortality that no plaque ever could. The image of a figure in a White Sox uniform stepping silently out of an Iowa cornfield became one of the most recognized images in American cinema. Jackson's bat, Black Betsy, was displayed for a time at the Baseball Hall of Fame in Cooperstown, the institution Jackson himself remained forbidden to enter. His legend was welcome, he was not. And then there is the detail that stops everything cold. On December 16, 1951, the Baseball Writers Association of America had planned a ceremony on Ed Sullivan's national television program. Joe Jackson was going to be honored. His old Cleveland teammate Tris Speaker, one of the finest outfielders who ever played the game, was going to be there in person to present him with a gold clock, a small gesture, a quiet acknowledgement. Recognition that was 30 years overdue. Joe Jackson died on December 5th, 11 days before the ceremony. He never received the clock. Speaker arrived at the studio, held the gift he had traveled to give, and went home. For over 70 years after his death, Jackson's name remained on baseball's permanently ineligible list. Then, in May of 2025, Commissioner Rob Manfred removed his name, along with Pete Rose and 15 others, from that list entirely. Manfred's reasoning was direct. A person no longer living cannot threaten the integrity of the game. Joe Jackson is now eligible for the Baseball Hall of Fame. The earliest a vote could take place is December of 2027, 106 years after the ban. 106 years after a judge decided that the verdict of a jury did not matter. The door is finally open. Whether the people on the other side of it choose to walk through is another question entirely. So, why does Shoeless Joe Jackson still cause so much debate? Not because the facts are unclear. He accepted money he should not have taken. He admitted it under oath. And then he played the best individual World Series of his life in the very games he was accused of losing deliberately. He spent the rest of his years insisting he had done nothing wrong on the field, a claim his numbers make genuinely difficult to dismiss. The debate endures because Joe Jackson is not a simple story. He is not a hero, and he is not a villain. He is something more uncomfortable than either. He is a man born into conditions designed to limit him, who outran those limits with his body alone, who could not read a contract, could not write his own name, could not navigate the machinery of professional sports with anything like the tools the situation required, and when the moment of real danger arrived, he made a bad choice. Possibly out of greed, possibly out of confusion, possibly out of a kind of helplessness that no batting average could protect him from. We started this video with a question. How does the third greatest hitter in baseball history end up with no Hall of Fame, no formal recognition, and a name associated with betrayal? The answer is not simple. It never was. Joe Jackson died on December 5, 1951. They buried him at Woodlawn Memorial Park in Greenville, South Carolina. A few hundred people came, in the rain, and bared their heads. His bat sits now in a museum in his hometown. Babe Ruth's swing lives in every highlight reel ever made. And somewhere in Cooperstown, there may soon be a plaque with a name that caused more argument than almost any other in the history of the game.